Hey there, Eli here, and it looks like we've got a lot of new information rolling out there for 3.17 Siege of the Atlas. This video will clarify some of the more confusing changes that are coming to the Atlas itself, what our gameplay loop looks like now with Zana gone, and clearing up any potential misunderstandings that might have come from something like the Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh jewel. You know what? Let's start right there. First off, how does this jewel work? Well, these two jewels, they work together. You have to have both of these socketed into your passive tree. So cluster jewels are an immediate synergy that come to mind because they come with a lot of extra jewel slots. But how do these jewels work? You have to have both of them. They have to have the required class be the same on each jewel. These are two separate items, two separate drops from the pinnacle bosses. And both jewels have to specify the same ascendancy keystone. Now, what does this mean and what does it not mean? It means if you are playing a Deadeye, for example, and you get all 4 of your keystones put in, you have all 8 of your ascendancy points, you could then, in theory, use these 2 jewels together, socketed into your passive tree, to get a 5th Deadeye keystone. Alternatively, you could get a keystone from Pathfinder or Raider. What you can't do is be playing a Ranger class and get an Ascendancy keystone from, say, the Marauder Ascendancies. So you as a Deadeye cannot go get a Juggernaut or a Chieftain Ascendancy keystone. You must meet the requirements that are laid out on the jewel for the required class. Next question is, well, what if you're an Ascendant? What if you're a Scion? Well,
He has our own set of special mods. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
next up, let's talk about the Atlas itself and how it's changing our gameplay loop. First off, say goodbye to Watchstones. No more leapfrogging strategies, no more of this nonsense. I'm guessing a number of you out there are like, thank God. We're going back to simpler times now, folks. We're just going to play the Atlas. We're going to unlock maps, we're going to do our bonus objectives and get passives for our passive Atlas tree, which we'll go over in a little bit. But for now, what you need to know is as you unlock and progress through the Atlas by just doing maps and working your way up to tier 14 through tier 16, you will now be able to obtain Void Stones. There's only 4 total, and you get 1 from each of the following bosses: the Uber Elder fight, the Maven, and the 2 new Pinnacle bosses. Each Void Stone that you get is going to upgrade another section of the Atlas to red tier maps. By the time you put in 3 Void Stones, you'll have at a minimum yellow tier maps on your Atlas, and then with all 4, your entire Atlas is red, so tier 14 through 16. Furthermore, as you progress through the Atlas and get more objective bonuses unlocked, you will unlock more favorite tier maps. That's the thing on the left-hand side there. You can get 12 favorited maps, and it operates the same way as before. Every map that you select in there has a 10 times multiplier applied to itself for that map to drop. So that means if you pick one map for all 12 favorite slots, it has a 120 times multiplier against the chance that when a map drops, it'll drop that map. This works out effectively to every time a map drops, 50% of the time, give or take, it's going to be the map that you favorited. Now, with Zana gone, we've got Kirac in her place. Zana served a really important function early on when you get to maps by helping you round out which objective bonus completion maps you haven't completed yet. So we would always look for her to help round us out and get us some maps we haven't dropped yet. And Kirac still serves this role. In addition, for his daily missions, he will allow you to pick and choose a set of maps based on the tier of the last map that you completed. So if you completed a red tier map, your daily missions from him will be all red tier maps. This is very similar in terms of usage as to when you found Zana within a map. You can't find Kirac in a map, but he will offer you, outside of maps in your hideout, he'll offer you these missions which serves effectively like free maps the way Zana used to give you when you'd find her in a map. Now before we get to the passive Atlas tree, the new one, let's look at where the older content ends up now into our gameplay cycle and where things drop. So the Conquerors and Sirus now behave like Elder Guardian and Shaper Guardian maps, where some maps will be influenced by Baron or one of the other Conquerors, and you are guaranteed to, once you kill the map boss, they will open a portal to go fight that Conqueror. That Conqueror will now drop a fragment, kind of like the Guardians do, And once you get all 4, you can put them into your map device and go fight Sirus. Now keep in mind though, Sirus himself no longer drops awakened gems. Sirus still has his unique loot pool, but he is always awakened level 8 in terms of difficulty, and he does not drop awakened gems. Those drops have moved to the Maven. And the patch notes tell us that the Maven boss fights, where you go into the Crucible and fight the 10 bosses that you had her witness, those can drop a number of awakened gems, not all of them. And the Maven fight herself is where she can drop any awakened gem. So presumably things like awakened spell echo, spell cascade, multi-strike, those types of bigger awakened gems are probably only dropping from the Maven. You shouldn't expect to see those from the Crucible fights. In addition, the Maven's unique items have apparently gotten a balance pass, supposedly. So be on the lookout for those. Maybe those belts won't suck. Now, the new passive tree for the Atlas. This is really cool because no longer do we have different specific zones that have specific bonuses for like Legion or for Harvest or whatever it is. So you're not pigeonholed into a certain section of the Atlas. Now the Atlas is just one big map with all of the different maps that you can go into, and you have a separate Atlas passive tree, and you get passive points for this just like our regular passive tree for our character. You get these passive points through completing bonus objectives on the maps. And why this is great is because it's really front loaded in terms of your ability to propel yourself into getting a lot of bonuses when you actually need them, which is at the start of the league. At the start of when you first get to maps, you really want to get as many bonuses to quantity and your damage output and all these things so that you can progress into tier 16 maps and get into the endgame content. At least that's the theory. So by tying the new Atlas passive tree points to the bonus objectives for maps, that means you get a ton of them right away, because every time you do a new map, presumably you're going to get a passive point for your new Atlas tree. And so now you have additional agency as the player to go in and say, okay, I'm going to look at the tree, I'm going to figure out where all of the Legion stuff is, and I'm going to go and specialize into that stuff real quick. And now whenever I play any map, I have all of those bonuses all the time for Legion encounters. I think this is really cool. It simplifies the Atlas in a lot of ways, and it keeps the depth. So that's awesome. That's exactly what we want. Now let's touch on the league mechanic real quick. Essentially, there are chained rare monsters, a bunch of them in each map, more than is necessary because you can only do 4 per map, but they want to cut down on needing to backtrack, so they put them kind of everywhere based on where people go in each map. And so what you do is you take league mechanic items that drop from monsters randomly, and you can put them into one of the 4 slots for the rare mob, and this will both guarantee a specific reward, like currency or weapon drops or armor drops, things like that, and also guarantee give the rare monster a specific buff. These stack, and it looks very similar to Metamorphosis in terms of knowing what kind of reward you're going to get out of it. And if you stack them correctly together, these augmentation items to release rare monsters, when you kill them, they drop upgraded versions of these league mechanic items to use on different rare monsters, either in that same map or in another map. And this culminates in, like the example they showed, which is this Innocence Touched one, where it essentially converts all of the rewards that you might get into currency drop rewards. Things like that. That's the general rundown. I'd check out the live reveal if you want some more in-depth information. It's okay. It's not a crazy complicated mechanic. It's just essentially more items, which is fine because that's usually what we get for a league mechanic when there is a major expansion like this. Oh, and as a quick note, we also get gem and flask affinities. There's also a gem tab and a flask tab, but you don't need to buy those because the affinities can be put on any of your other tabs, so that's awesome. Lastly, but not least, let's talk about the new crafting items, or at least a couple of them, the ones that you'll be interacting with most commonly. Here we have a list of the 4 that you will find that can actually drop in the game. The lesser version mods here are going to drop from maps, any monster, anywhere. Now what these are going to do, they're going to apply an implicit modifier into a helmet, boot, glove, or body armor. As you can see, there's a red and blue one. There are 2 different implicits that you can apply to these item slots, and it can only go on rare items, or white items, or blue items, but come on. These implicits have their own unique modifier pool to choose from, so we're going to have to wait and see as to what is possible to get there, or check PoEDB, I'm sure, in a couple days, or whatever it's going to be. Now, as for the Greater and Grand Ember and Ichors here, those will drop in influenced areas. Conquerors have been designated now as the same level as Shaper and Elder Guardian maps, so any influenced maps, it looks like, will drop these rank 2 and 3 Embers and Ichors. As for the 4th tier, the Exceptional, these are going to drop from our big bosses, from the 2 Pinnacle bosses, and their 2 Guardians. Now, that all said, there are 6 tiers, or 6 ranks, for these new implicit modifiers. So right here, the exceptional one is going to give you a rank 4. There is a rank 5 and 6. You can only get there by using an Orb of Conflict, which drops from the Maven. This orb behaves basically the same way as the Awakener's Orb, except it doesn't remove anything. Instead, it will pick randomly one of the 2 implicits, and it will upgrade one of them to the next rank, and it'll lower the other to a lower rank. So if you have 2 exceptional implicits on one of your items and you use a conflict orb, one of those modifiers is going to go to rank 5, the other is going to go to rank 3. There's no way to brick your items by using these orbs. So finding the exact implicits that you want is simply going to be a matter of how much money do you want to spend on this rare item. This looks like it'll be pretty fun. As soon as you get into maps, there's essentially no reason not to use these lesser ones that drop on your gear. Unless, of course, you're doing a build that really can't do fire damage or it breaks the build. If you're doing something like that, be careful, because you can get modifiers that are like add X to X fire damage to spells. So presumably there are modifiers like that for all of the elements, including chaos damage, so keep that in mind when you're going to roll these items. That's it for this video. I just wanted to touch on a few things that I thought might need a little bit of extra clarification, and also the things that kind of drew my eye. There's links below to the live reveal and the Q&A, and I gotta say, Grinding Gear is getting better and better as they do these now. So I'd recommend, if you have more questions or you missed it, go and give it a watch. It was very smooth, a lot of information, and it was really well said. Stay tuned for an Uber Elder guide and 1 or 2 more S-tier League Start videos from me. And if you're still watching, of course, go ahead and hit like and subscribe if you have not. This is super helpful for me and my channel, and I really appreciate that. Until next time, this is Eli, signing off.